What's up, everyone? Half Chrome, good morning. I got up early even before the dog because I wanted to get outside and fly these three drones and do some comparison testing. We've got the Parrot Anafi, the DJI Mavic Air, and the DJI Spark. I'm going to fly them all, put them through some tests, and hopefully you can decide which one is best for you. Okay, so here's the plan. First, we're going to do a flight test. I'm going to take these drones up. We're going to fly them in a similar pattern so you can see their video quality. Then I'm going to take some still pictures, and we're going to take a look at some side-by-sides of pictures that they take. Then we're going to get them up in the air at the same time and do some stability tests. Chris is going to meet us out here. We're going to put them through some high-speed wind testing. Then we're going to talk about pros and cons for each. I'm going to give you my list of top 3 pros and top 3 cons for each one of these 3 drones. So, let's get flying.
All right, so let's take a look at the Anafi here, flying a nice flight path this morning. You can see the camera is pretty crisp, pretty clear. It is a 21 megapixel camera. Now, that has a 2-axis mechanical gimbal with a 3-axis image stabilization done electronically. It has a max frame rate of 60 frames per second at 1080p, which is what we're filming here, but it also will shoot in 4K at 30 frames a second. It checks in at $699 and has a flight time of 25 minutes. The range will max out at 4,000 meters, and it is the middle of the pack in terms of weight at just under a pound, 0.71. Now, it does have a max speed of 35 miles an hour for flying in its sport mode, and it does not have obstacle avoidance. Now, it does have something that neither of these other 2 drones have, or really any other drone, and that is the ability for the gimbal to rotate a full 180 degrees. You can look down like most drones, you can look forward like most drones, but you can also look up. Also, with that 21 megapixel camera, it gives you the ability to zoom in, which is what we're doing right now. Love this feature. Pretty fantastic. Zoom in, zoom out, and it even does some of it losslessly depending on the settings that you have for it. Alright, now let's get the DJI Mavic Air in the air. You can see the camera, again, high quality. It is a 12 megapixel camera. It is sitting on a full 3-axis gimbal, all done mechanically. It will shoot 1080p at 120 frames a second, so that is actually a little bit higher than the Anafi, and it does shoot in 4K at 30. Now, it will cost you $799 retail price. That's $100 more than the Anafi. It has a 20-minute flight time, the same 4,000 meter range as the Anafi, and it's just under a pound at 0.95 pounds. Now, it does have a max speed when you're flying in sport mode of 42 miles an hour. And it does have front and rear obstacle avoidance, which certainly can come in handy, especially if you're flying some of those automated flight modes.
So let's take a look at some footage from the DJI Spark. You'll notice 2 things right off the bat. One, this looks like a slightly different scenario. It is. I had to fly this 2 days later because of a mistake that I made. And you'll also notice that it's moving pretty darn slow. Well, the Spark in flight mode is rather slow. It does have a top speed of 31 miles an hour, but the gimbal just cannot keep up when it's moving that fast. Now, the camera is pretty solid. It is a 12 megapixel camera with a max frame rate at 1080p of 30 frames per second. Does not shoot in 4K. Now, it is only $399, so it is the most inexpensive of these drones. With a few minor drawbacks, flight time is 16 minutes, range is 2,000 meters. Now, it does have obstacle avoidance in the front, also a nice little bonus. Alright, so we're looking at a picture from the Anafi. Now, it does not have AEB, so you're going to have to adjust your exposure manually. Color and sharpness are pretty good. We'd say comparable with the Air. Now, it does not have HDR, or at least it's not super easy to find, which is surprising because it's marketed as having one. It does have pretty good choices with white balance, saturation, contrast, and sharpening in the settings. Now, the 21 megapixel images seem to have some distortion as we kind of flip back and forth between that and the 12. Stick with the 12, it's a better choice. Alright, so let's take a look at a picture from the Mavic Air. I'd say overall this is the best camera with good JPEG processing choices, an HDR option, and AEB. We'd say it's pretty comparable to the Anafi in terms of both sharpness and overall quality, but sometimes it does tend to look a little bit less sharp because they're doing less processing, probably because they're overcompensating for the overly cranked up settings in the predecessor, the Mavic Pro. Alright, so here's some pictures from the Spark. I think maybe the greens are a little bit too blue in this case, but generally we've been pretty happy with the photos. Now it is nice and sharp like the other two, has a good field of view for photos, but tends to be a little bit more narrow when we're taking videos, but you can't tell from obviously the pictures, but it does seem to have maybe the most artificial sharpening applied. Here are those same three pictures. We'll let you decide which you like best. So now we got all three drones in the air at the same time. We've got our hands off the controllers. We're just going to kind of let them hover, and you'll notice that they're all very stable drones. They are. They all do a really nice job. You will see the one that tends to drift a little bit more than the others is the Anafi. It just tends to move a little bit more, not a whole lot, but it is more than both the Spark and the Mavic Air. DJI just seems to have that GPS locked in and doing a fantastic job of keeping those drones stable. We did have to grab the controller and manipulate the drones to kind of keep them away from the Anafi and move the Anafi to keep them away from those other drones. I wouldn't say that it's a problem. It certainly does a pretty decent job of holding its place, but it just certainly is not quite on par with the DJI drones here. Alright, so we busted out the industrial fan so you can see how these drones perform in high wind conditions. We'll hit it from the side, we'll hit it from the bottom, and you'll see the Spark here is doing a pretty nice job of fighting the wind and staying in place. Chris coming from the bottom trying to confuse the drone, got those sensors there too, and the wind that it's got to deal with. Spark does a pretty darn good job. Very stable drone. Mavic Air's turn. Now I turned the camera on here so you can see all three of these drones did a nice job of stabilizing that camera. So even though the drone you can see is fighting the wind back and forth, that camera stays nice and steady, nice and level. No issues in terms of video with that. And now it's the Anafi's turn. The Anafi does tend to move a little bit more. It wasn't as stable just in regular conditions. It isn't quite as stable in the windy conditions either. Now that gimbal does have a lot of travel, so that video will stay nice and smooth. Now the drone is moving, so that'll move your picture as well. But it does a pretty solid job of fighting the wind and staying put when needed. Let's take a look at the two apps. I'm more familiar with the DJI app, which is what we have here. You have the flight modes on the left-hand side, some information along the top about the drone, and then telemetry and information about distance and things like that at the bottom. Pretty common controls for the camera on the right side. The Parrot drone, the Anafi, a little bit different, took some getting used to for me. Flight mode changing on the left there. You can see I just switched into cameraman. The follow me modes or the tracking, pretty comparable to DJI, so no issues really with that other than they're different. The camera modes are on the right hand side, so if I want to switch from video to still pictures, I can do that. I can change the frames per second. There's actually a lot more, I think, quick information that you can change with the Parrot drone here. And then some of that telemetry information and drone information is all at the top. You see that stop button, that is to exit flight modes, which is certainly important to know where that is when you're flying. So overall, just a different app. Not bad, not good, just different. All right, so let's talk about the Parrot Anafi. What do I like about this drone? Well, the first thing I like about this drone that is unique to this is this gimbal. We have this look up angle, a full 180 degrees of travel that you do not get on any other drone. That is super awesome and unique. All right, so let's get a couple of shots that you can only get with that upward looking gimbal on the Anafi. See there flying through some trees, and you can see it looking up. What's it looking at? Well, it's actually looking at my Phantom 4 Advanced as it backs away, and you can see here as the Phantom pans up, you see those props. You're not going to get that with the Anafi. Now let's take a look at that from the Anafi's perspective. Pretty darn cool. I see that drone flying up above me, and then as I fly up and away, I tilt that camera back down. Now that 180 degree gimbal, pretty darn sweet, as is the zoom, which we saw earlier. With this, we have a 21 megapixel camera, which allows us to do digital zoom. That is awesome. This dolly zoom is a really unique feature to the Parrot Anafi. Love the ability to fly away and zoom in at the same time. Create some really unique features. Both Chris and I had some fun playing with, doing some selfies. Right? Plus, of these drones, this is the one with the best flight time, coming in at around 25 minutes, and that's pretty legit according to our testing. The folding mechanism is a little different than some other drones, with those arms folding forward, and it is a nice lightweight package, definitely lighter than the Mavic Air, pretty comparable to the Spark. These props are also pretty well designed to keep it pretty quiet. It is the quietest of the three drones that we have here. Okay. What do I not like about the Anafi? Well, there are a few things. First of all, there are some hidden costs. You don't get follow me or waypoints unless you want to pay another $18 for each one. That's kind of lame. I'm not sure why Parrot decided to do that. I think that's going to end up costing them more customers than it's actually going to make them money. So foolish choice, Parrot. If you're watching, change your mind. There are other hidden costs, like there is no charger, so you have to supply your own. It is USB, so most people have that, but again, that's kind of a pain. They don't give you the cord to plug the phone in to the remote. I would have liked to have seen that included as well, and maybe also, you know, a way to charge the remote at the same time as the drone. Speaking of charging, that is another major downfall to the Parrot Anafi. It takes forever to charge this darn battery, right? We charged, the best charge time that I got was about 2 hours and 50 minutes. That was with a 3 amp power brick plugged into the USB-C here. At 2.1 amps, it took me almost 4 hours, and with a 2.4 amp charger, I got this thing charged in just about 3 hours. Now, all three of those charging tests were done from an under 5% battery, so maybe if you don't fly quite so low, and we don't really recommend that you do, charge times will be obviously a little bit quicker. The Anafi also does not have obstacle avoidance, so you have to make sure that you're flying pretty safe and sound. I do like the flight modes. They're more or less comparable to DJI's flight modes, but flying automated flight paths, that is really when obstacle avoidance is important, and the Anafi does not have that. All right, so what do I like about the Mavic Air? Well, this is probably the best drone overall. It's the most polished. I really like it. This is the one that I would recommend to almost anyone. Now, it's not necessarily my favorite. I kind of prefer the Anafi with that interesting camera gimbal combination, but again, I would still recommend this one over that because of its really nice polish. Now, DJI also has implemented some really nice flight modes with this drone. I love the Asteroid. It is super cool, super unique, and a great way to impress friends pretty easily. Now, the camera on this one is also probably the best. Now, that's really subjective, but I prefer it. HDR is super easy to use. We've done some other camera testing with this drone and some other videos. If you want to see how it compares to the Mavic Pro and the Spark in more depth, we've done that. You can check it out here. What do I dislike about this drone? Well, it is the heaviest of the three. I'm not saying it's heavy, but it is the heaviest. The gimbal does have some limitations. It doesn't have as much travel as I would like. That's especially important when trying to do some smooth orbit modes. It sometimes struggles to keep that nice and smooth. And it is the most expensive. Now, with a flight time of 20 minutes, in optimal conditions, you're probably going to want more batteries, right? And those batteries are expensive. I'd recommend the Fly More package. So already coming in $100 more expensive than the Anafi. You're going to have to probably put a few more dollars into it to really do what you want. All right, so what do I like about the Spark? The Spark is a fun little drone. It comes in at $300 to $400. That makes it the most affordable drone on our list, and that is certainly important. It is portable. In fact, we got this portable charger from DJI, which I love and would absolutely recommend anyone that has a Spark. You throw it in here, you clamp it down, it'll charge the battery that the drone has in it. It'll charge 2 more batteries. That makes this an awesome portable machine. The flight time on this is the shortest at 16 minutes, but this portable charger, you just push a button. It has a built-in battery. It'll charge it for you on the go. Super awesome. Love this feature. I love flying my Spark in sport mode. Now, not necessarily FPV. We'll talk about that in a second, but this thing is super fun, super fast. In fact, it actually accelerates faster than the Mavic Air, although the Mavic Air, we know, is supposed to be a faster drone. This thing has some serious quick power. So if you like flying line of sight and you like some of those toy drones and you want to have some fun like that, you can do that a little bit with this Spark. So that is also a fun little bonus. What do I not like about the Spark? Well, I talked about the limitations that the Mavic Air gimbal had. This one is definitely more limited than that even. It is, after all, a 2-axis gimbal. It does have a tiny bit of stabilization electronically in the yaw, but when this thing is flying fast, the gimbal just cannot keep up. So if you're flying in sport mode, definitely limited there, especially flying FPV. When you're filming with the Spark, it is slow. It is a super slow drone, and that is because of the gimbal limitations. So you kind of have to keep that in mind. If you're looking for a slow, smooth shot, then you got the right drone. But if you want to pick up something that can film fast and steady, the Spark is probably not the best option. It also has fewer flight modes than a lot of these other drones. It is limited. Yes, DJI could implement a lot of the same things that the Mavic Air does with this, but it doesn't. You got to spend more money. The camera is also limited. Can't film in 4K, and there is no HDR. So believe it or not, we actually love to put this little 360-degree camera on our Spark and get some excellent footage. It is a lot of fun. So, which one would I recommend? That's really kind of tough. You're going to have to make your own decision. They're all excellent drones. They all have the pros. They all have their cons. Personally, I like this one, right? Gimbal, awesome, different, unique. I like the opportunities to use this camera and gimbal to do things that I can't do with any other drone. In terms of what I would recommend for most people, it is definitely the Mavic Air. And you know what? If you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, you know, that about half the cost, you definitely are not getting half the drone. The Spark is an excellent buy, probably the best buy option out here in terms of value. Thanks for watching. We have absolutely more details on our website, so if you want to get more in-depth, you want to see more, learn more, know more about any of these drones, you definitely want to check us out on halfchrome.com. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we appreciate you watching. Thanks, and have a great day.